Hey everyone, welcome to Season 3, Episode 5 of the Senstennial podcast. And while we have a handful of Sens-related topics that we want to kick off tonight, we're going to first get a message from Other Matt about a situation in the NHL that we want to just briefly touch on. So, Other Matt, take it away.
Thanks, guys. As a lot of you probably know, the Chicago Blackhawks were recently investigated by the NHL as well as Rick Westhead and Katie Strang of The Athletic and TSN, talking about a sexual assault allegation that was against their video coach during 2010. And today, a bunch of information came out, and it's pretty despicable stuff. Stan Bowman and anybody who was actually involved with the team has now been let go. There were players on that team that are on the team still currently, and there are administrative people or front office people, that were involved with the team then in other organizations. With that being said, unfortunately, the NHL had to NHL and only fine them $2 million and bring down a harder fine on the Arizona Coyotes and actually the New Jersey Devils with the Ilya Kovalchuk situation and the working out prospects before the combine situation. This is a pretty pathetic response from the NHL, in my opinion. This sets a dangerous precedent around the league, especially with the investigation going on in Pittsburgh about Bill Guerin covering up sexual assault allegations around somebody in the organization. But finally, it puts a price on sexual assault survivors, and that to me is disgusting. The Stan Bowman and his group were directly responsible for this coach getting a recommendation and then going to coach a high school team and then do exactly what he did to an NHL player to a high school player. They should be held accountable legally. And you know what? The Chicago Blackhawks are a terrible organization. And if you're a Blackhawks fan and you had to endure this and you're still behind them, yikes. Anyways, yeah, I'm sorry to bring down the mood a little bit, but unfortunately it's something really important that needed to be talked about. And yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, and thank you, Other Matt, for delivering that, we're going to go into a few other situations. One of them we're going to kick off with is the Anders Nilsson concussion situation that happened while he was with the Senators in 2019-2020. We're going to talk about our reactions to the past week of games that the Sens have played. We're going to talk about refereeing lately because it has been a hot button topic for a lot of people. So we're going to get into that. We'll talk about the injuries to Pinto and Murray and how it's affected the lineup. And this kind of leads into the Dylan Gambrell trade and how that came about. So first off, we'll talk about Nilsson before we get into everything else. Basically, during the 2019-2020 season, he suffered a concussion and apparently wasn't examined by a doctor following this concussion. So it's not a great look for the Senators. Obviously, I think a lot of people who cheer for the Sens are Nilsson fans. I mean, he came in and did much better than expected after the Sens traded Pyatt and a 6 to the Canucks for Nilsson. So it worked out really well for the Sens. He had great choice in pad design, 100%. And so it is sad because I would have liked to have thought that the Sens would, be a little more careful and wanting to inspect their players more thoroughly. So it was a little bit disheartening to hear this news. And so Other man, I know you love your goalies, so I'll let you touch on this one.
Yeah, actually, I also think Mike McKenna was in that trade. It was like a goalie for a goalie trade. as well as like Tom Pyatt and something else. But all this to say, it's definitely an interesting situation, especially considering that, why would Anders Nilsson lie about the treatment that he was given? It's, I fully believe that a bunch of NHL teams do stuff like this. But Anders Nilsson's the first one to sort of come out about it. It's really not a good look. Obviously right now it's going to be a bit of a he said, she said until the NHL, the Senators and the PA sort of look into what happened. But overall, it's definitely something that doesn't look great on the Sens.
Anything you want to add to that, Bennett? Or?
I was going to say, and I mean, speaking of players not getting taken seriously and things getting swept under the rug by organizations, it shows you that this kind of behavior is commonplace in the NHL, no matter the issue, and is part of like a broader discussion. I don't have much to add. I mean, I can't read Swedish. The interview was in Swedish. All I have is, scraps of tweets that people have translated in Google Translate or whatever. So I'm not going to act like I know one way or the other who's right and who's wrong and what happened. But what I will say is the thing that stuck out for me in hearing, Nilsson's comments get translated was the team telling him that, oh, you don't have a headache, you can't have a concussion.
Yeah, that's rough.
It's like, listen, I mean, I did not study anything remotely near to medicine, but I feel like there's usually more than one symptom for most medical ailments, and I don't think you need to be a doctor to know that. And that's all that I'll say on that.
What do you know, Bennett? Come on.
Yeah. I know nothing, but I do know that, which I think is the point.
All right. Well, on that note, let's get into the past week of games. So we actually did a live stream last week on YouTube with Graham Nichols. So we didn't do our regular scheduled podcast episode. Essentially, we're hoping to do one live stream per month featuring a guest of some sort. So that's just for everybody who only listens to the podcast. Just so you know, we're not skipping a week. It's just that we're doing 3 episodes a month and 1 episode that'll be on YouTube a month. That'll be a live stream. But all of our podcast episodes do get uploaded to YouTube as well. And it's at our YouTube channel, the Senstennial Podcast, so you can find them there. So just wanted to get that out of the way. So that's why we didn't cover the 2 games against Toronto and the game against Dallas. Now, after 6 games, the Senators are 2-4. Now, I don't think the record truly shows what this team's record could be. I know that sounds kind of weird. I think San Jose, they just got James Reimer on a heater of a day. And that was just brutal. Against the Rangers, we'll get to that. But geez, the last 5 minutes, I was at that game and I just wanted to die inside a little bit. So we'll get to all that. And Bennett, we'll kick it to you and you can kind of give us your reactions to how the Sens fared this past week.
Yeah, the past week, things have been on a little bit of a slide after a pretty positive start to the season. Sens are on a 3-game skid after losing several close games in a row to San Jose, the Rangers, and the Washington Capitals last night, which gives us a 2-4 record on the season. It had been, 2-2 until somewhat recently. Sens were outscored 8-12 in that span, which all things considered, shows the closeness of those games, especially since 7 of those goals came in a single game to the Capitals last night, which was a wild game that I assume we'll touch on very shortly. We've lost 3 in a row. I think, like Matt was saying, they haven't necessarily been bad losses. We haven't been getting completely outplayed. There's been some defensive, weaknesses that have been exposed quite frequently, which we're also going to touch on. But, we've been starting to put things together, and there have been some positive things to touch on. We've seen some improvement to special teams so far. The Sens have an above average power play this at this early stage in this season. 26.3%, which is a big improvement over last year. Hopefully that kind of continues. And to the eye test, it looks like generally a better power play than it did at points last year. The penalty kill is within a percentage point of the league average, so that's okay. Goaltending has also looked better so far for the most part, other than the 7 goals that got shipped yesterday. The Sens have been having a pretty good time of it. Not incredible goaltending, but league average goaltending, which is kind of all we can hope for right now. We've got a save percentage of 901 right now against the league average of 904, so that's kind of where we want to be. But the one biggest thing, and what we're going to end up talking about, I think, at length here, is some of the defending, especially in the bottom 2 pairings of our defensive lineup. And just to pull out a few names,
more than half.
yeah. Just to pull out a few names, Josh Brown, Nikita Zaitsev, and Victor Mete have been getting absolutely cratered so far this season. Brown has 0 points and is a -4. Mete has 1 point and is a -5. Zaitsev has 0 points, is a -5. All of them, of course, he's at even strength below 50. Just not good. Basically, whenever Shabbat and Zub aren't on the ice, this team looks like a bunch of amateurs. And, we have one pretty good pairing that is maybe a top 10 pairing in the league right now. And then the rest of our defense is just a black hole. And I know, Matt, you have a whole lot more thoughts on that.
Well, it's wild just because, Zub and Shabbat play basically the entire game. So,
they're basically getting away with playing their other 4 defensemen as little as is physically possible. Yeah. And they are still being our downfall, which is almost impressive.
I think we should also give a shout out to Nick Holden, because I think he's actually been pretty underrated in his defensive capabilities. I've seen
and I didn't single him out for a reason.
No, for sure.
He's been all right.
I just wanted to say, for a guy who's 34 and some people believe is on the back half of his career, which is fair. He is 34. He's looked mobile. He's looked defensively responsible, calm under pressure. Honestly, you put him with a guy like Brandstrom, and I really think that pairing could do a lot of damage, rather than Holden being paired with Josh Brown or like Zaitsev. I just don't think those partners fit. So I think that Holden's been a good shining spot. But sorry, I interrupted there. So
no. I think you make a very good point. Nick Holden has been seemingly quite the steal. I think that was a tidy bit of business by Pierre Dorion, but then it gets a little scuffy. Last night was a perfect indicator of just how black hole offensively Josh Brown is. When he gets the puck in the offensive zone, he loses it. After that massively terrible giveaway that led to the breakaway, I didn't see him get an offensive zone start at all. He has no confidence in the puck simply because he does not know how to play with it. There's no capability there, and I'm sorry, but you can't tell me otherwise. I don't believe he's an NHL defenseman. I believe he's simply in this lineup because he was the captain of the Oshawa Generals that won the Memorial Cup with DJ Smith.
And I just want to say, even going back to last season, right? Josh Brown had an okay couple of games at the start. And then it seemed like for most of the season, everyone was like, oh no. And then at the last bit of the season, down the stretch with Mete, that pairing looked great. They, I think, only allowed a few 5-on-5 goals in the last 14 games, which is ridiculous to think about. But then this year, it's I don't know what happened to Mete and what happened to Josh Brown, from the end of that season to this season.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It kind of makes me glad that the Sens gave Mete a 1-year deal. If they'd given him, based off the end of last year, let's just say they gave him 2-3 years at $2 to $3 million, I think you're already looking at that like, oof, regrettable signing. So I think that, having him just on a year contract might be able to flip him at the deadline. Josh Brown, who knows? He's a right-handed defenseman, which I think makes him a little bit more movable. I don't want to talk about selling players off already, because who knows? This team with a little bit of fine-tuning could definitely be in the hunt. But it's just, you look at the defenseman in the lineup, sorry, who last year showed you some promise, and this year it's like, I don't know what's happened. Like, they've done a complete 180 from the end of last season to this season. And when you have a guy like Brandstrom, and I don't think Brandstrom's going to be the savior or whatever, I think some people falsely believe that Brandstrom's like going to be this elite player, but I think offensively he can produce. Defensively, okay, there's some issues, but considering half the defensive core right now has issues, I don't think it'd be that big a problem to give him a shot with Holden on that second pairing and see what he can do. But Bennett, I'll throw it over to you, and you can kind of give us your takes on the whole defensive core.
2 quick points to make. One, I think Brandstrom could definitely help out, and there are some people, some Sens fans, who treat him like he's the second coming of our Lord and Savior Erik Karlsson. I don't think he's like, if he had that kind of ceiling, we would have seen it by now. But he's definitely not bad, and some other defenders are bad. And last year he had a Corsi of even strength Corsi of basically dead even, like 50.7, and he had 13 points in 30 games and was a +4. That's pretty good. Yeah. That is better than what we're getting from the guys we have now.
Yeah.
And then the other point, sort of in addition to that, is, do you think, because I think that Pierre Dorion has a picture of Jake Sanderson taped somewhere in his office that he looks at and takes several calming breaths every time that Josh Brown or one of those other guys steps on the ice, and it's his Zen thing that somebody told him he needed to do to lower his blood pressure or something. Because let me tell you, I am pretty close to pasting a photo of Jake Sanderson to our living room wall so that it lowers my blood pressure when I'm watching some of these games.
I'll tell you. I was having a conversation with my uncle Bill, who's an active listener of the Senstennial podcast. Big fan.
Shout out to Uncle Bill.
Shout out to Uncle Bill. And basically, if I'm Dorion, I go down to DJ and I say, listen, I've got a couple questions, because I want to I don't know about you guys, but the 3 games in that little stretch that we've lost, we've played well.
Yeah,
I would actually argue we were the better team we were the better team in all of those games.
Yeah, I don't think that's a hot take.
No, and if I'm Dorion, I said, why are you putting in players that make us lose games? Because our offense, it worked last night. Our goaltending showed up in those other two games, and then
disappeared against Washington.
Forsberg wasn't so hot, but at the same time, Josh Brown was directly he gave up 2 plays and then they scored.
I think Forsberg was also playing a little too deep. I don't know what it was, but he just didn't seem confident, and that's weird because Forsberg has looked confident otherwise. So
but my point being here is that I go down and say, look, I'm bringing up Brandstrom, and simply put, he's getting into 10 games. You have to give him 10 games, and if DJ pushes back, I don't know if you guys have seen Moneyball. From what I understand, I saw it a couple years ago, but there was a player on first base that he just really did not want playing first base, and he refused to take him off, so he traded him.
Yeah, I remember that.
Dorion, at some point, you're going to win games with this team, but you can't win it in certain facets of this team. I think if you're playing a combination of Josh Brown and Nikita Zaitsev at the same time in a game, they're going to lose. Zaitsev has no confidence whatsoever anymore.
Yeah.
His defensive zone play is atrocious. Josh Brown is atrocious in both ends. Like, at least Zaitsev can shoot a puck, or at least like dump it back in. But like, I didn't see that. I've never seen that with Brown this season.
Zaitsev liked to shoot it into Ovechkin's legs, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I said, like, he must really idolize this guy.
Yeah.
But
I mean, they're both Russian. Yeah, it makes sense.
Ultimately, like, you have Brandstrom, who, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep saying this. You're ruining his development when you put him in the AHL. You ruined his face. He just had to get 3 he lost 3 teeth.
It was 8 stitches.
Yeah, 3 teeth from some like bum ass player in the AHL. I'm sorry. I don't want one of my top prospects going through that. So you bring him up and you say, listen, he's playing in the next game, and you're going to play him with Holden, and you're going to see how it's going to go. Because ultimately, this is Pierre Dorian's team. This is not DJ Smith's team. This is Pierre Dorian's team. DJ Smith is the person who puts out the product. But
I'm going to add to that too. Sorry. Like, I think this is not like just an isolated situation too. He was the same way with Guy Boucher. He was like, I give Guy Boucher like all this power to make his own choice with the roster. But eventually he's like, screw this. Like, we got to trade Tom Pyatt. Like, it was getting ridiculous. And then,
you're pro scout. You can watch how bad this is.
Yeah.
Like, you can see that there was a person directly correlated towards 3 goals.
Yeah. And obviously, I know we would not try to single out a single player here, but it's just obvious that there are certain players who really aren't up to snuff in a team where, I know people like to meme on the rebuild's over. I don't think that means that we need to be a contender immediately, but when you say the rebuild's over, that's all fine and dandy, but you need to be bringing in players who can really help your young players develop. And I think it must be hard on players like Tim Stützle, Drake Batherson, Josh Norris, Brady Tkachuk, when they're these young guys who are under 25 years old, all of them, and you're doing everything right. And it's the other players who are supposed to be supporting you that are actually bringing the team down. Like, these young guys are carrying the team. And I think that's got to be really frustrating when the young guys are doing the part and, you're 27-year-old, 29-year-old defenseman. And there's
whatever age Zach Sanford is, he's
about 26, 27. Yeah. Anyway, when these guys aren't pulling their weight, like, it must be frustrating as a young player to see that. Yep. So, and I didn't think Sanford was a bad pickup when they made that decision. He's looked like he doesn't really have an interest in being on the Senators, if I'm being 100% honest.
No.
It just seems like he's disinterested about
collecting
75% of the time.
And going through the motions.
I mean, I could see the Sens slipping him out of the deadline for the sole reason that, look at him. And look at Ennis, who's like a foot shorter than him. Not exactly.
He's the most like, that guy utilizes and is as effective in every second he plays in every shift. Like, he has more meaningful shifts in one game than Sanford has had this entire season.
Yeah, like, honestly, if you gave Ennis Sanford's size, holy shit, like, you have a player that is tearing up the league.
And he was a hell of a player. Ennis was an all-star caliber player back
in his Buffalo days,
8 years ago. And Parker Kelly is getting sent down for paper transactions essentially, but he brings so much more to the team than I've seen. Sanford and Savarin and Shaw. Yeah, like that bottom line. And you have Formenton having to play with those guys, and Sanford is the third line left winger when it should clearly be Formenton, because Formenton's almost unnoticeable when he has to play with those guys, but he still does something. It's just these are the little things that you consistently notice as the season goes on, and you say, like, okay, well, why hasn't that been fixed yet?
Right. I think we'll let Bennett get in here because you and I have been venting a lot.
It's true. It's true. Bennett, please. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your bit about Pierre Dorion. This is Pierre Dorion's team and not DJ's team. But I also want to give DJ a bit of credit. Like, he's not a completely unreasonable coach. Like, he has shown a capacity to bench players who are hurting the team and to promote players who are helping the team. The example that comes to mind is Artem Zub. I mean, I was reading Ian Mendez's piece in The Athletic earlier about, the Zub and his emergence this year, on the power play, helping the second unit and stuff. And it's like DJ throughout the article was quoted these absolutely glowing, reviews of Zub, for good reason. He's a very good player. But he was a guy that DJ benched for the first 10 games or something of last season. And then he put him in and he slowly gave him more and more responsibility and he never came out. And this year they've given him a bigger role. And it's like DJ has shown the ability to recognize talent and to reward defensemen specifically who come in and do a good job.
Yeah.
And so it makes the Brandstrom thing tougher to call because, and in the opposite sense, I'm thinking last year, I mean, Derek Stepan was dead in the water with DJ Smith before he ever got injured. I mean, DJ, was about ready to, launch that guy into the sun last year. Yeah. And then he went injured and then, DJ.
It worked out.
Yeah, it kind of worked out. But so, it's we know that DJ is he's not I think he's a pretty good coach. I think he has guys playing the right way most of the time.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I trust his lineup decisions. Brandstrom is a weird outlier. And
it was last year with White.
Yeah.
At the start of the season when he just wouldn't play him in the places or just sitting him in general.
Yeah. And it's I really don't know what about Brandstrom's game DJ cannot countenance because he's not worse defensively than some of the defensemen that are playing now. And near the end of last year, he looked pretty good defensively, at least average, and brought some serious skill to the power play and in the offensive zone. And I really can't figure out why he isn't playing. And I'm not saying that he is the difference between us being or not being a playoff team. It's I don't think we are either way, but I mean, you got to do something with him. And it's listen, if you're not going to, you have to trade him. And I don't think that we want to do that. So he should just be playing.
I think you put Brandstrom in and it makes the winnable games more winnable.
Yeah.
His offensive ability makes up for his defensive ability by being able to know how to move a puck. So if he's hemmed into his own zone, ultimately he's going to have the vision to just dump it out if the need arises. But another great quote from Uncle Bill was, you eat tall defensemen need to prove that they shouldn't be in the lineup. Short defensemen need to prove they should be in the lineup. And that's just the way it's been for a long time. If you're 6'5", DJ Smith is going to like you. If you're 5'10", like Eric Brandstrom or whatever he is, you're going to be it's going to be an uphill battle because you don't fit the mold of a defenseman that DJ Smith covets, which is a rugged hitting defender. And unless you come out game breaking, which in my opinion, second last preseason game, he was unbelievable. He was our best defender.
Oh yeah, he was playing lights out.
He had a really strong preseason. Yeah,
exactly. And that's what's frustrating because DJ Smith will say, I give playing time to those guys who earned it. He earned it. Guys like Zaitsev and Brown have not, but they earned it by having one-way contracts and are being paid more than $1 million. It's frustrating. I do think DJ Smith is a good coach. I think he's his choices off at, like, I don't have a problem that much with his forwards core. Like, Fermenton should be higher than he is, but it's not the end of the world. Parker Kelly should have stuck around, but it was a transactional thing. Stuff happens, but defensively, it's.
So we've been talking about defensive stuff for a while, and that's fine, but let's talk about another thing that got people heated, and it was the refereeing. Now, I know there are a couple sides to this. There are people who believe, and we'll specify for Tim Stützle, because I think that's where most of the fire was when talking about refereeing over the last few games. Stützle drew 3 penalties, I think, at least, in the Rangers game. And sadly, the last one, he was called for embellishment. And people were like, oh, yeah, well, Stützle's flopping around too much, and he looks like a fish out there, and he's diving. And those are a few things I heard people say. And I think we have to look at refereeing as not being this thing where you make up for calls and stuff like that. Like, the league needs to find a way to move away from that, or not calling players because they're star players. Look at Ovechkin running Nick Paul into the boards. That was very dangerous. And I think somebody posted 4 screenshots of where Ovechkin lined Nick Paul up and started skating right directly for him to nail him into the boards.
It's textbook boarding.
Yeah, and that stuff needs to be called. I don't care if they're Ovechkin, they're Crosby, Patrick Kane, who it is. They need to be called for it. It needs to be by the book. And so, I don't know. If Stützle is getting tripped and it's a legitimate call, he shouldn't be being called for embellishment unless he's tapped on the skate and he does a full on dolphin dive. Then okay, fine, call him for embellishment. But I think it's ridiculous when you have the fastest player on the ice in the entire game against each of the last couple opponents. He's the fastest guy out there. Yeah, he's going to get tripped up, because as soon as players try to stop a skater who's going over 30 miles per hour, or whatever they clock them in at, 30 kilometers an hour, maybe not miles per hour, but when they clock them in at that speed, you're going to get tripped up way easier with less force, because that's physics, bro. So I don't know. I just wanted to maybe vent about refereeing and how poor it's been in general the last few games, and we can touch on that if you guys want.
I think you've seen a lot of needless take one guy out for roughing and that's it. And a lot of it has been towards the Senators. I mean, Chris Tierney got it when there was a big scrum. Brady Tkachuk got it when there was he got an unsportsmanlike conduct, which I genuinely have no idea what happened, unless he said, some slur or something, which is understandable, but I doubt it. And then, the Brady and Tom Wilson both go yesterday after Tom Wilson cross-checked Shabbat 3 times. I thought we were calling that a little more, but apparently not. The refereeing, Bennett had a really good point about it. And if he wants to say it, I'd love to hear it again.
How gentlemanly of you.
Yeah, well, just to, it's a point that's been made time and again, and it's that the NHL is pretty much the only major sports league that I can think of. And I'm not just talking North America. I'm talking, I'm a big fan of soccer in Europe as well and stuff. It's the league that has the most inconsistent refereeing of any league that I've seen. And to hear other people talk about it, if you're a fan of the NFL, it's what gets called in the first game of the year gets called in the Super Bowl. And the NHL putting away the whistles whenever it feels like, whether it's the playoffs or whether it's in the context of a specific game, and they're just going to let things go uncalled for a half a period or something, it brings derision, and it brings, criticism, and for the right reasons, because you're allowing, in some cases, and not every case, a lot of very skilled players also play with the physical edge, but in some cases you're allowing comparatively less skilled players to dictate the game instead of allowing your most skilled players to shine. And it's not good from an entertainment perspective. It's not good from a marketing perspective for the league, nor is it good for us as fans. Teams are built around the skilled players, and when those guys get shut down unfairly, for things that should be called by the referees, and then it isn't, then it's a problem. It's not just a problem for your team, it's a problem for the league, because it asks questions about what you want your league to be. And I understand that, not being a hockey guy myself, it's not a sport I ever played, but, there's like the culture of physicality and everything in it does make it unique among some of the sports, that are popular and that people watch, but it can also be its downfall at times. And anyway, that's a very long-winded way of saying that seeing people ragging on Stützle for, going down when he is fouled, which is what happens when you get fouled and the other team competes unfairly and is not penalized for it, sucks seeing that. And, I don't know what else to say about that.
No, for sure. And I also think that coaching staff should have more ability to actually challenge a call. And I know, obviously you don't want coaches wanting 20 penalties reviewed a game or whatever, because it would just get ridiculously slow, and nobody wants that. But I think the NHL should allow coaches to be able to challenge more than just, oh, that was offside, that was goaltender interference. They should be able to call, say it's a high stick, but the high stick was done by the player on the same team as the player who got hit, rather than it being your player. Well, then you can review that and be like, look, he was high sticked by his own guy. Our guy didn't touch him. And then they could be like, yeah, you know what, you're right, upon further review. And it's just like the NFL does. And I'm not saying the NFL is perfect, they have their own issues, but for their penalty system, I think while some people don't like how strict it is, I like it better than what the NHL's is, which is just trust the officials on the ice. There's human error, but that's their call. There should be at least some review process. But we'll get into the injury situations of both Pinto and Murray. So Shane Pinto takes a dangerous looking hit from, I believe, Mario Ferraro, and it didn't look good. Thankfully, he's only out for, I think, 2 weeks, which is great news. Some people expecting 4 to 6 weeks minimum after seeing the initial hit and how he reacted. So that's great news. And then Murray sadly gets hit by the goalie killer, Chris Kreider, who, after scoring his goal on Saturday, kneed him in the head and caused a neck injury. But he will also be back sooner rather than later. Apparently, he will play maybe after the road trip, but we'll see. Anyway, so we can talk about those injuries if you guys want. I think the Shane Pinto one is very impactful to the center ice position. So, other man, I'll let you take that one away.
I think I do really miss Shane Pinto. I think he's an integral cog in this machine right now. I think Nick Paul is actually a really good NHL center.
Yeah.
Very, very serviceable, top 9 NHL center, which makes having to go out and look for another one a little less important, but also the possibility of buying out Colin White a little more easy. I think DJ has spoken at length of putting Paul on the wing. That's ideally where he wants him, but he looks so good at center that he should be there. He plays as a center, essentially, just doesn't really take draws. I'm excited to have Pinto back because I think he brings a lot to the game offensively. It'll be good for him to play with Stützle, who, Pinto has a little more offensive ability, in my opinion, than Nick Paul. And, with Matt Murray, it's a rough go. He had a really good start to the season, and then, that happens. Last thing I can say on Murray is, I just wish he had more color on his goalie pads. So.
So, Bennett, I'll let you touch on the Pinto and Murray injuries and get your insight there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Pinto is a big miss for this team. He has very quickly established himself as a key part of this team since he came up from the NCAA at the tail end of last season. He had a good preseason, and seeing him go down so early sucks. It's not that long of an injury from the sounds of it. He was expected to miss 5 games. He's missed 2 of them so far. So theoretically, it should be another 3 games or maybe about a week before he's back. Hopefully that stays true. But like other Matt was saying, kind of the silver lining to this has been getting to see Nick Paul play center, and he's been doing a pretty good job centering the second line. He, that's not where he belongs. He's best suited as like a really good third line player. But if it means that the team sees the flexibility to have him center that third line in the future, like you said, I think it opens up a lot of options. What if your third line becomes, just talking off the top of my head, like a center of Nick Paul, and then with like Formanton and White on the wings? That's pretty good. That's a good third line.
Or I mean, Ennis long term. Lock him up for 3 years. Love that guy.
Yeah.
You and Tyler Ennis.
I love Tyler Ennis. He plays the game right.
Yeah, and Nick Paul's a really good player, and having guys who can fill multiple roles is always a plus. On Matt Murray, I have nothing else to say other than what you added. He had a really good start to the year. It's so refreshing to see him playing well. Immediately he gets fucking like assassinated by Chris Kreider. So that sucks. And, our goalkeeping hasn't been fantastic outside of him this year. Like Forsberg stood on his head once at the start of the year. Gustafsson has looked so-so. Forsberg got lit up last night, but we were discussing that, that's not entirely his fault and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's like Murray has actually been our best goalie this year in a very, very small sample size. And would love to see him, come back and continue playing well. That'd be great. I don't think we've had any update on his timeline, but hopefully, Gustafsson or Forsberg can also, put it together and have a few stronger showings, and then that'll maybe ease the pressure a little bit.
Well, I want to kind of defend Gustafsson. I think he played really well against Dallas.
I think last night he was solid.
Well, what I was going to say is I think he played well. It's hard to face down Ovechkin twice. And the opportunities Ovechkin got, obviously once on the breakaway, the second time basically leaving him open in his office. Like, what the hell? But anyway, aside from that, Gustafsson had a good game. I don't blame him for allowing 3 goals when 2 of them were from the greatest goal scorer in the history of the NHL. I really can't blame him. He's a rookie. But you're right. Like, Murray was actually playing quite well. He did play that San Jose Sharks game and only allowed 2 goals. In that Rangers game, he was, really close to getting that shutout until obviously that penalty that Parker Kelly took. And we all know how things went from there. And I have trauma from being at that game, so I don't want to get into it. But he was playing so well. And honestly, one of the saves that he made with his glove off the goal line has to be already in the conversation for one of the best saves of the year. I couldn't believe that he made it. Matt Murray's never struck me as an athletic goalie. It's more of he's just very composed, calm in the net, and he plays the angles well. But that was an athletic stop, and it kind of surprised me. And so, I'm kind of with you, Bennett. I think overall he has looked like the most stable goalie. It's just a matter of his health. Can he stay healthy? Because that is really key. And if he can start for let's just say 50 games this season, I'd like to see that, because I think that would be a good gauge of, okay, what is Matt Murray on this roster?
Yeah.
But
because, I don't know how great of a gauge we got last year. I mean, he was in and out of the lineup constantly with injury. Some nights he was getting lit up. Other nights he was playing pretty well. It was really hard to piece anything together. And then, if it'd be really good if at the end of the season, listen, again, I reiterate, I don't think we're a playoff team no matter how good goaltending we get. Within reason. If someone decides to go, full Ken Dryden or something, well, sure, maybe we're a playoff team. But with the goalies that we have and where they are in their careers, I don't think we're going to be a playoff team anyway. But it would be really nice to find out what we have in our goalies by the end of this year. If we can come out of this season and say definitively, we know what we're going to get out of Matt Murray, we know what we're going to get out of Gustafsson, maybe Forsberg if he's still around, all of those things, that would be something really useful for this team to have. Because right now we've got 4 or 5 goalies in the depth chart who could potentially project as either an NHL starter or a backup at least. And it'd be really good to start figuring out where they're actually going to land. And if this season helps us get there, then, that'll be useful.
Right. And as we all know, the Sens were active on the trade market, or at least are supposedly active. They made a very small depth trade for Dylan Gambrell, who's a 25-year-old player. He played for San Jose before coming to Ottawa. He's played about 100 NHL games. Not a huge point getter. Analytically, he seems to be decent defensively. Not really a stud, of course, but just someone that the Sens can bring in. He'll probably be in the lineup Friday. He can hopefully just fill that depth role, and I think replace Logan Shaw would be my best bet. And I think hopefully bring a bit more stability to that fourth line. For me personally, I think other than maybe a game or two, Logan Shaw's looked pretty out of his depth. And I think it's just better to give Gambrell a shot. He's put up good numbers outside of the NHL. Who knows if he has to play up the lineup for any given reason? I don't know. He might have some offense to show, but I won't bank on it. But a 7th round pick, which was San Jose's 7th round pick, to get him, I think it was worth a shot. And I should add that the Senators can play him for 10 games. Or sorry, if he doesn't play 10 games or is on the roster for less than 30 days, they can send him to the AHL without waivers. So that's also good.
Cool.
I guess there are no other comments on a
no. I mean
that's
a yeah. It's a depth move. Like odds are he's probably not going to be, especially if Clark Bishop comes back, who probably has that fourth line center spot almost wrapped up because White's not coming back anytime soon. Pinto's going to come back, and then it's going to look like Norris, Pinto, Tierney, and
probably Gambrell for now.
Yeah, or Shaw. Either one of those two guys is going to be going on waivers, unless they send him down and Gambrell doesn't have to do that waiver thing.
Yeah. But the one other thing I was going to say is I know there's been a lot of chatter about the Sens being in the market for a top 6 forward. I personally think the focus should be on a top 4 right-handed defenseman. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah. I mean, they should have done that in the offseason. They didn't. Melnick even said they were going to, and they didn't.
I personally think that they had their eyes set on Adam Larsson, and when Adam Larsson had that whole because it came out before free agency that he was being selected by the Kraken, obviously.
Yeah.
The expansion draft did come first, and then he was going to sign an extension there. I honestly think that was the Sens' main offseason target for defensemen. I think they looked at him, saw Edmonton's cap space, and were like, okay, this could be a player that we target and make a hard drive to get on this roster. And that's just speculation on my part.
It's not smart putting all your eggs in one basket and then just being like, oh well, we can wait till next year, because guys,
totally,
Lassie Thompson this year came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Other than that, JBD was our guy. Yep. He was the future right-handed defenseman in a top 4 area. Thompson's re-entered the conversation, but goddamn, outside of Zub, it's not a good look, and they should have addressed it this offseason. Guys like Yanni Hockenpah, Ethan Bear, they were both available, and it didn't take a whole lot to get Ethan Bear, and it took less than what they paid Delzato to get Hockenpah. So it's frustrating to see this sort of stuff and we should probably go get a top 4 defenseman. Well, you should have done that when you said you were going to do that, but they didn't. So now they're in this situation of having shit D. Frig.
All right. Well, yeah. Bennett, you have anything you want to end it off on, or are we just going to go with other Matt's little vent there?
Just do what you want to say, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna let him have the last word here.
Okay. Thanks everybody for listening. Really appreciate it. Like you said earlier, you can find our episodes on YouTube as well as where you've been listening. Aside from that, you can find us on Facebook. Twitter and Instagram. Obviously, most active on Twitter, and we're also on Discord. You can shoot me a message at Matt Senstennial Podcast there. So, yeah, and we're on Reddit, so you can follow us there. You can follow us everywhere. So we appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you next week.
Go Sens, go!
Like that commercial where the guys are like tapping the counters and stuff on TSN.
Oh God.
Go Sens, go! That kid gets hammered in the boards, and it's like he gets up and it's like, "Go Sens, go!"
Why is that your rallying cry? He's like, "Go Sens."
Every time I see a commercial, I just want to imagine that the kid that's just smashing him in the boards, Brady Kachuk, is like a 10-year-old.
Did you know the old guy is Frank Finnegan?
No way, actually.
Yeah, bro.
Dude, tapping his counter. What's up with that though?
No, Frank Finnegan's like long dead. I think he'd be like 122.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was like, really? Like,
yeah,
man, you got me. I'm very gullible. Ty is gonna have to cut all of this.
I was just saying, like, we're still recording. Is this like?
Yeah, no, it's all going in.
Here?